Cedar Hill, Pennsylvania was a small town, a seemingly peaceful place where winter snow blanketed rooftops and quiet streets as if time itself had frozen. The town had once thrived as a coal mining hub in the early 20th century, but after the mines shut down, Cedar Hill slowly faded into obscurity. What remained was an apathy that settled like dust over its once vibrant past, and prejudices rooted for decades. That night, Jordan Hayes walked slowly along the sidewalk, each step imprinting into a thin layer of ice. His faded military coat clung to his shoulders, the tattered American flag patch still carefully sewn onto the left sleeve. He was homeless. He was black. He was a veteran who had fought in Kandahar, but in Cedar Hill, he was just a lurking shadow under the streetlights. When he reached the door of Red Rail Diner, a 24/7 diner, the warm yellow light inside almost seemed to mock him. He stood there for a moment, brushed the snow off his shoulders, then pushed the door open. The bell chimed. The smell of coffee and baked goods filled his lungs, but the entire diner fell silent. Conversation stopped. Glances flicked toward him, guarded, judgmental. A mother pulled her child closer. A man hurriedly shoved his wallet into his pocket. Jordan was used to that feeling. He chose a seat at the counter, where he could see both the entrance and the kitchen, a habit from his military days. "Just want a hot meal," he muttered. Not to anyone in particular, just to remind himself he was still human. Emily Walker was the waitress that night. Just 23 years old, she worked at Red Rail to save for school and take care of her younger brother. She had seen many like Jordan, but something in his eyes made her pause. It wasn't disappointment, it was a painful clarity. "What can I get you, sir?" she asked, handing over the menu. "Black coffee and today's special, if that's all right," Jordan replied, his voice low and gentle, yet full of respect. "Today it's roast beef, mashed potatoes, and dinner rolls," Emily said, pouring the coffee. "Sounds perfect." "Thank you," Jordan lifted the coffee cup, his calloused hands seeming to hold on to the last warmth left in the world. In the corner of the diner, two local police officers, Chad and Barnes, were seated. They came by every Tuesday night. When they saw Jordan, Chad chuckled, intentionally raising his voice. "Digging through trash bins doesn't count as dinner, you know?" Barnes added, "Better check the silverware, Emily. Might go missing." Emily blushed but forced a smile. She was used to difficult customers, but this time she felt ashamed for doing nothing. Jordan didn't react. He just took a sip of coffee, eyes lowered, eerily calm. Chad stood up, walked to the counter, and sat right next to Jordan. "Hey, Emily," he grinned falsely. "How's your little brother doing at the academy?" Emily nodded. "He's doing well." Barnes came over, taking the seat on Jordan's other side. They were boxing him in, like a slow hunt. "We need good cops," Chad said, looking at Jordan. "Not like those junkies, beggars, pretending to be vets to milk the system." Jordan said nothing. He kept sipping his coffee. "We've met plenty of homeless guys who claim they've seen war," Barnes chimed in. "No proof they ever held a rifle?" Emily brought out the meal, trying to break the tension. Chad picked up a sugar packet and tossed it onto Jordan's plate. "Here you go. Do something for your supper." A heavy silence fell over the diner. A few customers looked away. A teenager pulled out his phone, secretly recording. Jordan calmly set down his cup, picked up the sugar packet, and placed it back in front of Chad. "I earned my dignity in Kandahar," he said softly, "and I don't need to reclaim it from people like you." Chad flushed red. Barnes placed a hand near his holster. "You threatening a cop?" "No, sir," Jordan replied. "I'm just having dinner." Chad jumped up, his chair scraping loudly. "I think you should leave. You're disturbing the peace." "I paid. I have the right to eat." Barnes stood up. "Or are you refusing to comply?" Emily tried to step in but was cut off. "Shut up, Emily, unless you want your brother kicked out of the academy." A cold threat. Emily backed off, slipping her hand into her apron pocket, where her phone had been recording since the beginning. Chad grabbed Jordan's shoulder. "Get up, now!" Jordan didn't resist. "I've broken no laws. Failure to comply, causing a disturbance, threatening an officer," Barnes growled. "That's 3 charges. I did 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 Purple Hearts, 1 Silver Star. Yet I can't even have dinner in a place I once served to protect." Chad yanked Jordan roughly to his feet. Emily turned pale. Jordan looked back at her and said clearly, "If anything happens to me, call General Whitaker at the Pentagon. Tell him Jordan Hayes is in trouble." Barnes sneered. "Right, and I've got the president on speed dial." They dragged Jordan out. No one intervened. No one stopped them. Jordan's military ID fell to the floor as they pulled him out. Chad stepped on it, kicked it aside with disdain. Emily waited until they were gone, then rushed out to the parking lot, picked up the freezing piece of metal. Engraved on it, Hayes, Jordanja, J.O. Post Methodist. She looked down at the phone still recording. Then, whether it was instinct, anger, or a sense of justice, she opened her contacts and searched for the number to the Department of Defense. Her finger trembled as she hit the call button. Inside the staff break room of Red Rail Diner, Emily Walker leaned against the wall, hands shaking with anxiety. On her phone, the screen showed an active call connecting to the emergency line of the United States Department of Defense. Each ringing tone made her feel more and more like she had lost her mind. This 23-year-old woman who used to worry about being late or dropping a tray of coffee was now doing something she had never imagined. Calling the Pentagon to report that a homeless man had been wrongfully arrested by local police. And not just any man, the same soldier who had politely called her ma'am instead of making the usual crude comments. The fourth ring. She nearly hung up when a deep, professional female voice answered, "United States Department of Defense. How may I direct your call?" Emily swallowed hard. I need to speak with General Whitaker about Jordan Hayes, Sergeant Jordanja Hayes." There was a strange pause. Then the voice returned, polite but cautious. "Please hold." She held her breath. Her mind spun. Maybe they'd hang up, or worse, investigate her for making a prank call. But then, "This is Harold Whitaker." The short, calm sentence grounded Emily back to reality. "This is Emily Walker. I work in Cedar Hill, Pennsylvania. 2 police officers, Barnes and Chad, they just arrested a homeless man. His name is Jordan Hayes, and before they dragged him out, he told me to call you, that you'd know what to do." Whitaker was silent at first, then his voice softened, lowering. "Did you say Jordan Hayes?" "Yes, sir. They mocked him, humiliated him because he was homeless. But he's not like the others. He spoke respectfully, and when they took him, he didn't resist. He just looked at me and told me that if anything happened, I should call you." Whitaker didn't respond right away. Emily nearly thought the call had ended until his voice returned, firm and steady. "Ms. Walker, you did the right thing. Send me any video or evidence you have immediately. My assistant will give you a secure number, then leave work and go home. Don't talk to anyone, not even friends. We'll take care of the rest." Emily shivered. "Yes, but what about him? Will he?" "Sergeant Hayes is a brave soldier, and I don't leave my men behind." In a polished wood-paneled office in Washington, D.C., General Harold Whitaker, a former battlefield commander, now a senior national security advisor, stood up from his desk. The name Jordanja Hayes had awakened memories long buried. Kandahar, 2003. The unit ambushed, his vehicle hit by a rocket, his leg trapped under the burning frame. Jordan, then a young sergeant barely in his 20s, had run into enemy fire, pulled him out, left no one behind. Not that day, not ever. He picked up a direct line and dialed the emergency code. "This is Whitaker, Sierra Echo 94 Alpha. Initiate emergency response in Pennsylvania. Cedar Hill Police Department. Unlawful detention of decorated veteran Jordanja Hayes." Then he made 4 more calls. To the Department of the Interior, the Veterans Affairs Agency, the Department of Justice, and a close friend currently serving as a White House advisor. The name Jordan Hayes was now a system-wide red flag. In the holding cell, Jordan sat still, hands resting on his knees, eyes half closed. No longer angry, only the silence of someone well acquainted with loss. The bench was as cold as steel, and his back throbbed where Barnes had shoved him down during the handcuffing. But he didn't groan. He returned to an old exercise, tactical visualization meditation. Every hallway, every turn in the Kandahar base he once patrolled. It was how he had survived when PTSD clawed at his mind. The metal door clicked open. Jordan didn't open his eyes until he heard the sound of heels stopping in front of him. "Mr. Hayes," a calm female voice, "you're being released. Please come with us." He opened his eyes. Two people dressed in black, wearing federal badges, their faces expressionless, but their eyes serious. Jordan stood up without haste. He didn't ask. He just nodded. "The old man kept his word," he said, unable to suppress a faint smile. On the way out of the police station, the officers all paused and stared as Jordan walked past, escorted by federal agents. Barnes went speechless when Morales held out a badge and stated clearly, "You're under full investigation for this arrest. We have direct orders from General Whitaker." Barnes's face went pale. The police chief, the same one who had once ignored numerous complaints, now stammered, This doesn't reflect our department. They'll be suspended." Jordan looked at them but said nothing. He didn't need to. The silence of a survivor carried more weight than any word. Outside, Emily stood under the eaves, her thin coat no match for the cold. When Jordan appeared, she ran toward him, nearly stumbling on the snow. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice choking. Jordan nodded. "Thanks for making the call." She held out his military ID. "I didn't think it was real." Jordan slipped the chain over his neck. The tag was freezing, but it brought a strange warmth, a piece of his identity he thought he'd lost. "It always works," he said softly. That night at Pine Grove Shelter, Jordan was given a temporary room, but instead of sleeping, he quietly dialed a number on an old landline phone. After a few rings, a familiar voice answered, "Q's Tech Haven, fixing what others gave up on. What can I do for you?" Jordan smiled. "The Eagle needs fresh talent." A pause. "Jordan, is that really you?" "It's me, Q. I need your help. Cedar Hill. Serious situation." "Give me 6 hours," Q replied. "I'm coming, with backup." 6 hours later, a van marked Q's Tech Haven slid into the Red Rail parking lot. Quincy Q Morales, a tech genius who'd lost his legs to an IED, rolled out in his wheelchair, still as sharp as ever. Behind him were 3 others, Ghost, Trace, Link, veterans, counterintelligence specialists, and investigators. They didn't need an explanation for why they came. They came because Jordan called. "You still love stirring up trouble," Q joked, shaking Jordan's hand. "And you're still the one who decodes it," Jordan replied, eyes glinting with relief. Pale morning sunlight poured onto the road leading into Cedar Hill, casting a thin mist over the rows of leafless trees. A sleek black sedan pulled up in front of Pine Grove Shelter, a former textile mill of Wilmore Textiles, one of the last factories to survive the coal collapse in Cedar Hill, Pennsylvania. Now it served as a refuge for those abandoned by the system. Ava Washington stepped out of the car, adjusting her coat. At 34, she was already one of the East Coast's most prominent civil rights attorneys. Her presence, a woman familiar with Capitol spotlights and federal courtrooms, was like a jolt of foreign electricity in Cedar Hill, where law had long been obscured by politics and compromise. Her confident stride, heels clicking on the concrete, announced her intent. Ava hadn't come to ask permission. She had come to act. She was the daughter of a renowned judge, mentored by General Whitaker since law school. And now when he called, Ava didn't ask why, only where. Inside the shelter's common room, Jordan sat alone with a cup of coffee. When the door opened, he looked up and immediately saw a woman who didn't resemble anyone else in this town. Her gaze didn't waver. The look of someone familiar with confronting power and injustice, and who bowed to neither. "Mr. Hayes," she stepped forward, extending her hand. "I'm Ava Washington. General Whitaker sent me." Jordan shook her hand. His grip was calloused, firm, his eyes observant, not out of suspicion, but with the caution of someone who had lived between the battlefield and the margins of society. "I didn't think he'd send a polished DC lawyer down here," he said. "He said you might not want help, but he also believed you'd be smart enough to know when to accept it." Jordan smirked. "He's not wrong." They sat at the back table, away from others. Ava opened her briefcase and handed him several documents, permits, and federal credentials. "Those officers seriously violated your civil rights," she said. "But what's more concerning, I see signs of a network. What happened to you may not have been an isolated incident." Jordan sat upright. "What do you mean?" Ava lowered her voice. I've been reviewing internal files from the Cedar Hill Police Department. There are multiple reports of violence, dismissed without cause. Some of the complainants disappeared, withdrew their statements, or left town without a trace. They might have been forced out, Jordan said, or worse. An hour later, they met Emily at a small cafe outside town. Emily brought her phone with the video she had filmed during Jordan's arrest and footage extracted from the diner's security camera. My friend works at Red Rail, she explained. He helped me download the original footage, and I've backed it up. Ava watched the video, her eyes never leaving the screen. When the scene showed Chad throwing a sugar packet onto Jordan's plate and the insults that followed, she frowned. "This is gold," she whispered. "Undeniable." Emily was still trembling. "I can't believe I called the Pentagon. I just couldn't stand there doing nothing." Jordan looked at her gently. "You did what very few people have the courage to do." That night, Ava sat in her small motel room, documents spread across the table. She called into the federal inquiry system, requesting data on the two officers, Barnes and Chad. The results stunned her. Both had previously been internally investigated. Over 7 complaints for excessive force, all dismissed. She kept digging and found one suspicious name recurring in every investigation: Captain David Brick, the head of internal affairs at the Cedar Hill Police Department. The next morning, Ava went to the district attorney's office to file a formal complaint, but Assistant DA Alan Parker intercepted her. "We can't accept this complaint without cooperation from local law enforcement," he said, avoiding her gaze. "You know that's wrong," Ava countered. "In a civil rights case, I'm authorized to file directly." Parker lowered his head and whispered, "You don't understand. There are things people like you shouldn't dig into." "Are you being threatened?" Ava asked bluntly. He fell silent, then stood stiffly. "I believe this meeting is over." Ava turned to leave, but her eyes burned with a cold resolve. That afternoon, Emily burst into Ava's room, eyes wide. "My brother, Jameson, is at the police academy. He just called. He said there's something about Barnes and Chad, and he wants to talk to you." 30 minutes later, Jameson, dressed in a cadet uniform, sat upright across from them. His young face was tense, but his voice was firm. 3 years ago, Barnes beat a mentally ill homeless man to death. They said the man attacked first, but witness statements said otherwise. I know because Captain Brick used that case as real-world training, an unofficial class, only for selected cadets. Jordan looked at the young cadet, the one who had broken the silence to stand against the system he once hoped to serve. "You did the right thing," he said softly. Jameson lowered his head. "I couldn't stay quiet anymore, not after what they did to my sister." In the following days, Ava and Emily interviewed more homeless individuals around Cedar Hill. A grim picture emerged. People taken out of town in the middle of the night. Some left in the woods or snow. Some disappeared after attempting lawsuits. All targeted the same vulnerable groups: homeless, people of color, veterans. "They're not just harassing," Jordan said during a small meeting. "They're purging systematically, clearing the way for resale." On Thursday night, when Ava returned to her motel room, she found the door open. The laptop was gone. Papers were scattered. No warning. No typical signs of forced entry. "They're not threatening anymore," she said when Jordan came to check. "They're acting." Jordan looked at the ransacked room. His eyes shifted, no longer calm. "Then it's time to strike back." "You have a plan?" Ava asked. Jordan nodded. "I'll call a friend. He's good at unconventional warfare." The next morning, Jordan stood in front of a public phone booth. An old habit, safe, untraceable. He dialed. A voice answered on the other end. "Q's Tech Haven. We fix what others can't." Jordan said, "The Eagle needs fresh talent." A pause, then a burst of laughter. "Back in trouble again, Hayes. Big trouble. Need the old team. Now. Send the coordinates. Reinforcements en route." Friday morning, inside a small motel room on the outskirts of Cedar Hill, the air felt thick, like moments before action. On the table, laptops were open, wires tangled, encrypted phones, radio frequency scanners, and satellite maps, all feeding into a command center run by Q. Jordan stood in the center, observing everyone like he was leading a platoon. The team included Ghost, signal analysis specialist, Trace, military counterintelligence, Link, cybersecurity expert, and Q, former military communications tech, now the tech commander. Q wheeled toward the main table. I'm starting to see a web forming. This isn't just bad police behavior, it's a system. Trace pointed at the screen. We trace secret transactions, regular bank transfers from a seemingly legit company to Barnes, Chad, and several other officers. Where from? Ava asked, eyes locked on her file. Falcon Corps, Ghost replied, not taking his eyes off the monitor. A defense contractor. Operates shell companies across multiple states. They're not just beating people, Jordan said, voice low. They're being paid to clear out the town. Link projected a map. Rundown housing, homeless shelters, public housing, locations Falcon Corps had been quietly acquiring. We're the trash they're clearing before the titles change, Emily said, her voice trembling. That same day, Emily finished editing the first video, a 3-minute expose, opening with footage of Jordan being dragged out of Red Rail Diner, followed by her narration and clips she'd extracted from the security camera via her friend, Mark. When the video was posted on social media, views surged. First 6 hours, 320,000. By the next morning, over 1 million. Hashtags number Justice for Jordan and number Shieldman began trending. Outrage spread. Veterans groups, civil rights organizations, and even local news outlets began asking questions. Jordan stood in front of the screen, nodding quietly. They'll strike back, fast. That afternoon, Emily went out to get food for the group. Still walking quickly, head down, but clearly she had let her guard slip, a fact Jordan would later blame himself for not warning her about. An unmarked police car screeched to the curb. Emily jumped. Chad stepped out of the driver's seat, smiling. Emily Walker, you're under arrest for obstructing police work and tampering with evidence. What? Emily stepped back, panicked. Your video says otherwise, Barnes said, getting out from the passenger side, his gun casually at his side. They shoved Emily into the car, ignoring her screams and the stares of a few bystanders. The engine roared and the car sped off. Jordan got the news from Q through secure radio. He stood up, his expression changing entirely. They won't take her to the station. Too risky for the media. It'll be an off-the-books location. Ghost pulled up a satellite map, pointing to an old industrial zone. Once a furniture factory, now abandoned. A small outbuilding showed 2 heat signatures. One stationary, likely Emily. One moving, probably a guard. I need a small team, veterinarians. No lethal weapons. Just approach, extract, and retreat. Trace, Ghost, Q, and 3 other veterans Jordan had met at the Pine Grove support group volunteered immediately. The plan was precise. One team would create a distraction at the main entrance. Jordan and a smaller unit would approach from the rear. Drones would provide aerial surveillance. Q would coordinate from the command van. Under the dusky sky, they moved silently. Drone lights revealed Barnes patrolling outside the outbuilding, his gun hanging loosely at his back. Jordan approached the door, signaling halt. Trace quietly picked the lock. The door clicked open. Inside, Emily was tied to a chair, mouth gagged, eyes wide. Barnes had his back to her, talking on the phone. Jordan signaled. Within 3 seconds, they stormed in. A precise blow from Jordan, straight to Barnes's arm. The gun dropped to the floor. Barnes collapsed. You okay? Jordan untied the ropes, gently helping Emily up. I'm still breathing, she gasped. They asked about the video, the backups, about Ava, about Q. She pulled a small recorder from her shoe. I didn't stop recording for even a second, she said. Jordan nodded, his gaze softening. Back at the base, they played the audio recording. A voice rang out in the room. No one believes a junkie or a crazy vet. People like that, we've buried them. Chad's voice, clear, indisputable. Ava pushed the laptop toward Ghost. Everything we have, Jameson's statement, the financial records, this recording, is enough to expose the entire system. And Brick? Jordan asked. He doesn't get to walk away. We're tracking him, Ghost replied. The drone caught footage of him withdrawing cash from 3 different ATMs. No bank card, cash only. Link cut in. He's preparing to flee. That evening, the drone circling Cedar Hill captured a critical image. Captain Brick stepping out of an SUV, dragging a large suitcase into a hangar at a private airstrip 5 miles outside town. Echo confirmed, plane scheduled to depart at 2:15 a.m., registered under a Falcon Corps subsidiary. "This is our last chance," Jordan said. "We end it tonight." The rapid response plan was deployed. Jordan would confront Brick. Echo would provide remote support with a non-lethal stun weapon. Q would monitor via drone. Ava would notify federal authorities, ready for arrest. Emily would remain at command, handling communications and evidence broadcasting. At the dimly lit airstrip, only a few runway lights glowed faintly. Dressed in black, Jordan stepped out of the shadows. Brick was walking toward the plane when he froze. "Going somewhere, Captain?" Brick turned, startled. His hand feigned adjusting his coat, but Jordan saw the pistol at his hip. "Don't," Jordan said calmly, firmly. "My friend is watching from every angle. One wrong move, and you won't leave this place." Brick sneered. "Hayes, I should have known you never knew when to quit." "This time I don't," Jordan replied. Brick reached for his gun, but just as he did, a taser beam struck from a distance. His body convulsed and dropped. Floodlights flared on. Federal agents stormed in, cuffing him and reading his Miranda rights. Inside Brick's bag, $470,000 in cash, a fake passport, a USB drive containing a list of Shieldman officer payment accounts. Ava stepped forward, expression unreadable. "Captain Brick, you are under arrest for abuse of power, collusion with private enterprise, and systemic civil rights violations." Brick snarled as he was shoved into the vehicle. "They won't let this slide. Falcon Corps has eyes everywhere." Jordan looked at him, calm. And this is when the people take their power back. The morning after Brick's arrest, tension filled the temporary command center. Q and Link combed through every file on the USB taken from Brick's suitcase, while Ava made nonstop calls to federal agencies, media outlets, civil rights organizations, and legal teams across the country. "There are even internal recordings from Falcon Corps on this," Ghost said, his voice low. "Details on a vagrant cleanup plan," Trace added, his hands trembling as he scrolled through a PowerPoint slide displaying "Stabilize communities for growth, remove destabilizing elements, vagrants, veterans, disruptors." Link quietly printed a list of Shieldman branches. 11 cities. They had been operating like an underground organization, outside the law but within the system. "This isn't local anymore," Ava said. "This is a national civil rights violation." That evening, the group organized an emergency town hall at Cedar Hills Community Center. Invitations were sent to residents, press, veterans groups, and legal collectives. The hall was packed. People sitting, standing along the walls, many watching via outdoor screens. From a diner incident, the town's attention had now centered on one man, Jordan Hayes. Jordan wasn't dressed fancy. Light blue shirt, gray khakis, worn-out shoes. But he stood tall like a soldier at roll call. Ava opened, "Today we bring to light an organized scheme funded by a private company targeting the homeless, especially veterans, under the guise of community stabilization." Emily played the new video, security footage, excerpts of Barnes's final statement before his death, and Chad's confession. "No one believes a crazy ex-soldier. People like that, we've buried them." The room went silent. A few muffled sobs could be heard. Emily stepped up to the podium. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes were fierce. "I used to believe the police were protectors," she said. "But when I saw them arrest a man just for sitting and eating alone, when they threatened me just for offering him a hot meal, I realized silence was no longer an option." After Emily came Jameson. He no longer wore his cadet uniform. His voice was strained but resolute. "I was taught how to falsify reports, how to rewrite the truth. I stayed silent because of threats. But I can't stay silent anymore." One by one, others shared their stories. A mother told of her son getting his nose broken by Chad for sleeping near the post office. A veteran spoke of being illegally locked in a warehouse for 2 nights during winter. A small shop owner admitted the police had asked her to report anyone with a suspicious figure wearing old clothes. Finally, it was Jordan. He stepped onto the podium, looking around the hall. Quiet, focused. I served 3 tours in Afghanistan, he began. I pulled my fellow soldiers out from under gunfire. I never asked to be honored, but I never thought I'd be dragged out of a diner by men wearing the badge of the country I fought for. He paused, voice catching. My wife, Sarah, died of cancer because of bureaucracy. I lost my home to predatory interest rates, and in the end, I lost my identity, became invisible in the town I once called home. It wasn't until someone stopped to ask if I wanted dinner that I remembered I still existed. When Jordan finished, a long applause followed. Not the showy kind, but the kind that carried release. On the large screen, Emily displayed a series of photos of other veterans who had been targeted. This isn't just about Jordan Hayes. It's about everyone the system has thrown away. Meanwhile, across town, Captain Brick was holding a small press conference. Only a few cameras were present. These accusations are entirely false. We followed protocol. Jordan Hayes is a mentally unstable homeless man, being exploited by anti-government activists. But even as Brick spoke, reporters received alerts. A live stream of the town hall was spreading, with over 2.5 million live viewers. Cameras turned away from Brick. Reporters packed up their gear and left. Brick stood in the empty lot, shouting. No one listened. The next morning, the U.S. Department of Justice announced a federal investigation into the Shieldmen network. The digital evidence collected by Q's team was verified. Captain Brick, Chad, and 8 other officers were arrested. A wave of investors pulled out from Falcon Corp. The company announced it was suspending residential development operations, but it was too late. State senators called for a national hearing. In Cedar Hill, recovery began, step by step. Red Rail Diner changed ownership. Emily declined to return as a waitress. She launched a fund for veteran support. Jameson, after testifying, joined the Justice Department's Internal Affairs Training Program. The abandoned warehouse, once used to detain the homeless, was donated and renovated into the Hayes Veterans Community Center. On opening day, light rain fell. On the lawn, children wearing armbands reading "Justice for All" ran around the veterans. Q, now in a wheelchair, his arm fully healed, led the ceremony. We didn't rebuild from ruin, we built from justice. Ava smiled. The Dignity Act passed. Protection for veterans is now federal law. Jordan stood apart from the crowd, his hand gently holding Sarah's military tag in his coat pocket. He said nothing, but his eyes shone brighter than any speech. As the ceremony ended, Emily ran up, camera in hand. Jordan, my documentary, The Veteran Who Wouldn't Bow, it's premiering next week. You'll be there, right? Jordan laughed, genuinely. If you invite me, I will. This story doesn't end here, Emily said. It's just beginning. Part 6. The final drop and a flame ignited 1 month after Captain Brick's arrest. Jordan Hayes sat alone in his Washington, D.C. hotel room, adjusting his tie in the mirror. He had worn a uniform during the most brutal moments of his life, but standing before a congressional hearing as a citizen fighting for justice made his hands tremble slightly. Doc Holloway stood behind him, a light hand on his shoulder. You're not going to impress them, Jordan, she said. You're going to tell the truth. The hearing room was packed. Rows of lawmakers lined both sides. Cameras broadcasted live. Bright white lights shone down on the man who had once been dragged out of a small diner, just for daring to exist. Jordan took a deep breath and stepped up to the podium. My name is Jordan Hayes, former U.S. Army Sergeant. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 Purple Hearts, 1 Silver Star, and 4 years of homelessness on American soil. I once thought coming back from war would be the hardest part. I was wrong. He paused, letting the words sink in. I'm not here as a hero. I'm a witness to the collapse of a system that was supposed to protect people like me. He spoke about Sarah, his wife who died because of bureaucracy, about losing his home to predatory loans, being denied health care, pushed to the margins, and about that day when he was humiliated, assaulted, nearly erased just for wanting dinner. What kept me standing? were people like Emily, Ava, Q, and many ordinary citizens who refused to look away. The room fell silent. Then everyone stood in applause. Not the political kind, but sincere, from the heart. 2 weeks later, Congress passed the Dignity Act, one of the most comprehensive civil rights reforms in 2 decades. Mandatory independent audits for police departments with discrimination complaints. Federal protections for whistleblowers like Emily. Establishment of the Homeless Veterans Support Fund, providing housing, healthcare, and job services. Back in Cedar Hill, Jordan was welcomed as a symbol, though he never felt comfortable with that. Emily completed her documentary, The Veteran Who Wouldn't Bow, chronicling the journey from Red Rail Diner to Congress. It won awards at 3 major film festivals and was acquired by Netflix for global distribution. At the premiere, Jordan sat in the back row, avoiding cameras. But when Sarah's name appeared on screen, along with the military tag he once held, he couldn't hold back tears. The Hayes Community Center ran smoothly. Q, now fully healed, managed the tech department and helped veterans transition to new careers. Emily taught media literacy. Jameson trained digital investigators. Ava founded a permanent branch of Hayes' Law in Cedar Hill. Ghost, Trace, and Link, the team that helped dismantle the Shieldmen, now ran an early warning system. Whenever signs of systemic violence appeared elsewhere, they were the first to respond. The Falcon Corps case became a federal scandal lasting 9 months. The CEO and multiple executives were prosecuted. Stock prices plummeted. Over 11 Shieldmen branches were dismantled nationwide. The U.S. president invited Jordan to the White House. He declined, instead requesting that the event's entire budget be donated to the Veterans Fund. "I don't need honor," he wrote in a letter. "I need action." The town of Cedar Hill changed. The wall where Jordan had once been dragged now bore a brass plaque, "Where silence ended and truth began." The old station where Jordan once slept in winter was renovated into a modern shelter named Sarah's Stop. One early spring morning, Jordan went to the post office to check his mail. Inside his box was a plain envelope, no return address. It contained another military tag, David West. With it was a handwritten note. "You were the first to speak his name. Our family thanks you. We thought he had been forgotten." Jordan folded the letter and gripped the tag gently. He returned home, opened a wooden box where he kept the tags of fallen veterans, those erased by the system. He added David West's tag, placed his hand on the lid, and closed his eyes. "You're not forgotten." Each morning, Jordan walked through the garden at the Hayes Center, where children learned to grow vegetables and elderly vets taught each other how to fix old computers. His stride still held strength, but his eyes had softened. One day, he saw a young man, about 24, in a torn jacket, curled up on the front steps. "Have you eaten?" Jordan asked. The man looked up, startled. Jordan recognized the eyes, the same look he'd carried for 5 years on the street. "I can help," Jordan said softly. "Not charity, just sharing." The young man nodded. A tear rolled down his cold cheek, and a hand that once pulled others from battlefield fire now reached out to lift someone else up. 1 year later, when a podcast asked Jordan what he felt about the journey he'd taken, he replied with a single sentence: "I don't want to be a symbol. I just don't want anyone else to go through what I did," with no one listening.